So I'm going to start recording. All right, my panelists, are you all ready?
Ready.
Okay, great.
Did you unmute and video enable Bianca? Or did they do that to themselves?
That's what I'm trying to wonder. I think they might have done that to themselves because I'm trying to unmute them. But Bianca, you can hear this. You're part of the panel. So when you're ready, you know, just hop in.
Am I still there?
Yeah, you're part of the panel group instead of the audience.
Yeah, but I can't see myself. Not that I have to, but I'm just saying.
That's all right.
Okay.
So,
Can you send the audience link so that my mom can do that and not be in the panel?
I want to be in the audience.
okay. Let's see. Okay, I can do that. Give me a sec.
Thank you.
Can you sort of hide me?
Just go to the link. Do you see it in the chat bar, that link?
There we go.
Okay.
All right. Awesome. Hi, Bianca. Nice to see you. Welcome, everybody. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody, for coming out today. My name is Kianda. I am the community coordinator and I do some outreach for Bluestockings. Bluestockings is a feminist bookstore, radical. We are also a fair trade cafe located in the Lower East Side. Again, thank you so much for coming out. Thank you for sitting through me trying to figure out how to use Zoom. It is so confusing, especially when you have all the power, but we're all good now. Thank you everybody for coming out. Post in the chat where you guys are tuning in from. I'm so happy to have I see some people from Seattle. Nice to see you guys come through. Happy to get it all started. Yeah, so just some reminders, this is being recorded. So I don't know when it's going to be uploaded to YouTube, but it will be, and just to make it accessible for everyone to go ahead and watch it later. So tonight's event is going to be how to use zine making to amplify your voice. We're going to be talking about just the creative process, how to use zine making to do all of that. We're going to be talking about, the sexy topic of the hour, racism and discrimination within, the art world. This conversation is going to be great for those of you who are interested in learning more about zines, new zine makers, current zine makers, and those of you looking for more, Black artists and artists of color to follow and find a community. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to turn it over to my panel. We're going to start off with introductions, so y'all can talk about yourself, your work, your backgrounds, and the communities that y'all are all involved with.
Cool. So I'm Tyla, and I run Pink Boot, which is an immersive music media outlet that's designed for and by Black femmes. I currently work for Columbia Records, and just being in such an industry space, I guess you can say, is really what drove me to want to create my own outlet.
Okay, I'm Jonas. I'm in Chicago. I've been making zines for a long time, and now my work really has nothing to do with it. Yeah, for now that's about it.
I'm Higu. I'm Pittsburgh based, and I just have been making comics and zines since I got out of college because I didn't like college and I needed to do something different. So I'm like a art educator in Pittsburgh in like the zine community and the art education community, whatever that is.
Okay, great.
Should I go?
Yes.
Okay, I'm like, my screen's over here, my camera's over here, so if you see me switching back and forth. But anyway, I look at the camera. Hi, I'm Bianca Xunise. I am a comics illustrator and professor hailing from Chicago. Let's see, a lot of my work deals with the intersections of Blackness and mental illness and gender expression, all of those things. I started off drawing comics because I didn't see Black femmes in comics, and it kind of started as just like, oh, I just want to see a representation of myself. But as I teach others, it started as one thing and has grown into something so much bigger. So that's why I always say I talk about the intersections of all of these things, more than my Blackness, and even like my regularness, and kind of amplifying that it's okay to just be regular, and you don't always have to live your trauma for other people to consume.
That's so true.
Extremely legit.
That is so true. So I guess we'll continue that. And I guess what led y'all to y'all zine making or your art? And I guess what is it about the community that you have appreciated? I know zine making is very much associated with like DIY and doing it yourself. So I guess what led you down that path of doing it yourself and doing your own art?
Well, for me, it kind of just happened because Pink Boot, like first and foremost, was about music and amplifying Black femmes through music. And so I originally decided to reach out to Afropunk when I first made Pink Boot and ask them if I could have a press pass to their festival in Brooklyn. That's where I'm based. And just to go and take pictures of attendees, of Black femmes in the audience. And I like flat out was just told no by their PR person, like no explanation, like no nothing else, just no. And I looked up who it was, and I saw that it was a white man. So I was just like, there's no way I'm gonna just take this no from this white man about covering Black femmes at a Black event. So I found out who the organizers are, and I emailed their assistant and was able to like get a meeting with them and tell them what Pink Boot was about and what I wanted to do, and they were super into it and super supportive. So the first zine I made was actually just photos of Black femmes that I've taken at Afropunk.
Jumping off of what I said before, yeah, I'm trying to think of when I officially started making work, because for me, drawing and illustrating and capturing my emotions and feelings on paper is something I've always done. And it's kind of hard to define the line of when I was like, oh, maybe I can give this to other people, or maybe perhaps I can make money from this. But it probably was around college, and again, I've always been really into like the underground comic scene. So, and a lot of those dudes turned out to be like painfully racist, like not even like kind of racist, but like, ugh. So so if there was any imagery of myself, it was either like some sort of caricature, sort of like what's his name? I don't know why I can't remember his name. He's like one of the biggest underground comics artists. Long story short, I wanted to again see those stories not told by white men, but told by myself and people who look like me. And I was TAing for a friend, Jeremy Tinder, who's a local comic artist in Chicago. I was working as a teacher assistant for him, and it was for a after-school art program for at-risk youth, and I used to be one of those at-risk youth that went to the same program when I was a kid. So yeah, I was like taking notes in the back of the class and being like, oh wait, you got to print things like this, you got to cut it like this, you got to do all that kind of stuff. And so I was literally like taking just like my journals and scanning them and putting them out there. And it really kind of happened organically from there. Like other people are like, yeah, I want to see this too. And it just keeps growing from more people being hungry for that type of representation.
I was very similarly making comics about just like my life and like mental health stuff when I was in college. I did 1 year of grad school. I finished grad school. And it was a very, very terrible time. So I was drawing comics about it. And I think at the end of grad school, I was like, I should put my comics on the internet, haha. And then I did, and people were like, you should make more comics. So that's where that started. And I think my first ever zine was a comic zine that I made because I was like very desperately in love with this white guy. And I was like, how do I process this? And I made a comic. And at the end of it, I was like, my soul is free. And that was probably the first zine I ever made. And then I just like never stopped.
I love that.
That's great. Yeah, I was first introduced to zines back in high school. I remember I was hanging out with a group of friends, and old friend of mine, Allison, just brought into the room this huge box of zines, and I hadn't even heard of zines until then. And we just kind of plowed through it, and for the next like 2 hours, it was just completely changed my world. And started making zines just with those friends, and then I kind of stopped. I never really stopped writing. I just kind of stopped with zines until maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago or so. And yeah, then just got back into it just because what I really loved about it was just the fact that you can just, there's no one to answer to. When I was writing, I was, submitting a lot of stuff to journals and publishers and stuff. And I just like with zines how you could do that. It's just, I don't want to have to please any sort of, anonymous editor. I could just put this out myself, and it'll either find an audience or it'll find no one and end up in the garbage. I found that kind of empowering, kind of comforting. So.
Yeah, I know for me, like I've been working at Bluestockings for like almost a year. And I remember when I walked in and I saw like the zine section that we had zines, I was like, oh, they still make those. Because I remember learning about zines, no shade, but I remember like learning about zines from like the Riot Girl era. Because, I had like my emo phase in middle school, and I like loved like Hole. I know Courtney Love is problematic, but like I loved like grunge and all of that. And I like learned like how zines were used in the Riot Girl era. So when I walked in and I saw zines, I was like, oh, they still like do those. Neat, cool. So that's how I figured it out. I was like, oh, they still do that. That's like awesome. I guess next we can go into like y'all's like creative process. I know for me, I'm kind of like in a process of like starting a zine, and like for me that was like one of my inspo for like doing this event, because it was like there's info but then there's kind of like not the info that I specifically want. So I was like, I'll just do the damn event and like learn as well. So when it comes to creating, when you have an idea for like an issue or whatever the case may be, like what does that process look like? What are you inspired by? Do you have to tailor it to your audience, I guess, or people who, to your readers?
Yeah, so for me, it's kind of intertwined with my mental state at the time. Like I ruminate on things a lot. And so I find that a lot of my inspiration will come from an idea that I've just like almost been swallowed by at that particular time, like point in time. And then I try to expand that concept as far as it can go. So like, for example, an issue I'm working on now, the theme is send nudes. So from that, I was like, all right, we're going to talk about nude makeup. We're going to talk about the color nude and like why it's generally white. We're going to talk about music that makes you want to send nudes. We're going to talk about like sex work, like just anything that I can like from that point outward. So that's usually how I work.
Yeah, for me, I'm pretty much just well, until the recent big events, I'd pretty much just been writing all the time. And I feel like once you get into the habit of it, and not necessarily like some people set out a certain time every day, 12:30 to 1:30 or something when they're going to write. Not exactly that rigid, but just getting into the habit of just, writing, just kind of like, oh, I don't really have anything to do. I'm going to start writing now. And I feel like the creative energy just kind of pours out when you're that constant or that consistent with it. And yeah, I pretty much just focus on the writing. And after several pieces, I just kind of look at it and say, well, great. I think I can make a zine out of this, and as I sort of look through the pieces to see which ones fit. And damn, I mean, putting together a zine is usually like the easy part. So.
I am also a ruminator when I think about it. I do both like auto-bio and fiction stuff. And the fiction stuff is always just like, I'm going to think about a set of characters for the next 5 years, and then maybe eventually I'll make a comic about it. But for the auto-bio stuff, it's definitely a lot of like, I can't stop thinking about this until I make a thing about it for myself to understand. And then also, I guess, other people can read it. Or like, sometimes something will happen in my life, and I'll be like, this is so ridiculous. I have to figure out a way to express this to other people. Like, I have a zine called Titty Chop Boob Slash, which is about my top surgery. And I didn't even consider making like any zine or comic about this until I don't even remember I had a conversation with the doctor, and the surgeon was explaining to me the way that they calculate whether or not insurance will cover your surgery is they take, this is going to sound gross, sorry everybody, but they take the like mass that they remove from your chest and they like put it in a bucket and they weigh it to see if it weighs enough for them to like want to pay for it. And I was like, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I need to tell people about this. Yeah, it's so ridiculous. I was like, everyone needs to know. I'm going to draw a whole comic about this. And that's like the whole reason I made the comic. So it's like, little things.
Who thought of that? Like, what was the first like surgeon that was like, well, let's see. Like, let's, weigh it out.
Get a bucket.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so to follow that, we're talking about our process.
Yeah, our creative process.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna be able to stop thinking about that now. Like,
I know the visual.
It's like it makes me so angry. I'm like, oh, I'm so angry that you had to be dehumanized in that way.
Yeah.
But my process is very similar to yours, where it's just kind of like, there goes my head. Either it's like something that haunts me that I have to like verbally vomit it out onto the page where I can like release it. But now that I'm becoming an elder, I am learning to take a beat between that process. I used to, because my comics and zines and illustrations and writing have stemmed from diary work that was personal, that was never meant for other people to see. I'm learning more now to protect myself than I was before. I was really kind of earnest, and I come from that generation of, oh, my brain is full of hot air today. But there was that, a Go Jane, I think that was or XO Jane was the website where everybody would write like confessional op-eds, and some were like really cringeworthy, and I'm part of that generation of oversharing, and I'm learning to like, maybe you don't need to give everyone everything and exist again just by exposing your traumas to others for attention and approval and to prove that you exist. And I think that not to go like on a whole like tangent of like the road through therapy and like learning that I don't need approval from other people to see worth in my work. But as I get older, I'm learning that sometimes I need to sit with something and not write it as soon as it happens to me, so I can have some depth and some perspective to it than I wouldn't have had if I had just written it when I was angry. And that's been more of my process now. And now, because I'm like giving things time to ruminate and marinate in my mind, things that I might have thought, oh, that's dumb, or why would I write about that? Now I'm like, oh my God, like, yeah, I need to write about this. Or I'm seeing like the pattern of it or how it's connected to all these things. And a lot of my writing and my work kind of always is part of this, it's always a part of the same universe, and it's all kind of fits within this over story. Like all the stories in my mind exist in like this Stephen King universe in my head. And so they all tie together in some way, and sometimes some need to speak out more than others, depending on what's current and what's going on. Like recently I've been kind of inspired to write more about my early 20s, when before I kind of saw them as like a waste of time. I was like, oh, I was still trying to figure myself out and trying really hard to be straight. But now I'm like, maybe I should talk about that and how other people relate to that. Because I kind of used to exist in this mind where either you were gay or you were straight. And if you danced in that middle, then you were a disappointment to both sides. And now I kind of want to share those stories.
I think going off of all of that, when I was first start writing, I found it almost impossible to be able to write fiction. And I think it was mostly because I hadn't processed a lot of my own experiences yet. And so prior to going to therapy, which I very seriously needed, and I'm glad I got at the time that I did, but now that I'm reflecting, I think that I wrote in those ruminations as a form of trying to process things that I really did need to just work out in therapy.
I totally see that, like not being able to write fiction. I find when so much in my personal life is going on, I feel like I need to address it right then and there. That's just me. So the thought of thinking about something that's not real is like, how can I, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I totally get that.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, since I also am like came out of like writing from very personal things, I remember like I finally went to therapy, and after doing that for a while and going back to trying to make comics, I was like, am I boring now? Can I still make comics? And then after, you know, like after I had like processed that feeling in therapy, I was like, oh no, it's okay. Like I can still do this.
I feel that so deeply. Like I literally write on my bedroom wall a lot because it's just easier for me to get my thoughts out on there. And one of the things that I have written at least 10 times is like, does my creativity come from my disorder? Is my creativity just my disorder? Like, what is my creativity without my disorder? And it's like, that's something I still struggle with.
That used to be a fear that I used to have when I was younger, until I learned to accept my mental illness as another facet of me. Like, I am this shade of brown and I have these moles on my face and I also have depression. And it's kind of just like they're a part of me. And because there will never be a moment in my life where I'm healed now and I never have the depression again and I'll never have anxiety. It's a constant journey. When I see the journey of it going, I can see my mental improvement, and that has been really exciting to go back and read comics when I was like really, really low, and read the work that I do. Like when I see the growth, when I see my language change, when I see the way I talk about things now, it like if you like take the time to like look at your work, it sometimes can be like, wow, I'm really growing, or check out this language, listen to this reparenting I'm doing to myself. Like, it's really exciting when you have those moments. So don't like I like encourage someone to like censor themselves. Like, always take a beat, and like if you need to step away from it, like step away. But sometimes it's good to see that growth and not deny yourself to on the page, just all your feelings.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
definitely.
Oh
What?
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I've definitely gone back to look at earlier stuff and just been like, wow, buddy, what were we came a long way.
I was just gonna say, you guys have all, shared, very personal things and things you've expressed in your art. Have you ever like hesitated? I know for me, like it's just coming from childhood, it's been put into me to like keep things a secret. And part of healing is just for me has been learning to be open, especially with those around me. How is it translating those things into art to be shared publicly? How do you get over that, you know fear, I guess, something so private being out on the page for all to watch and critique?
So I have a really specific relationship with that because I went to a very, very super Catholic school.
Same.
And I took this advanced fiction writing class, and all I did was write autobiographical stuff. Like none of it was fiction, but that's how I presented it. And the first thing that I submitted was a rewritten prayer that had the Virgin Mary as a victim of assault, and it was like me processing my own assault. And like to hand that in like that super Catholic environment and hand it in that way, like fiction, it although I was still hiding myself, it was, or I guess although I was still sharing my like inner like story and like trauma, it was behind this like layer of, oh well, this is, I made this up, I made up this little prayer and I'm handing it in. But it was so radical for that environment that I still I don't know, I don't really know how to explain that feeling, but it did something and it was pivotal. And I think that informed a lot of my writing going forward. Just because I was like, if you can be the only Black person in this class, like in this super Catholic class, that's rewriting a prayer, that's making it about assault, that's pointing out all this stuff, like there's really no environment you can't share it.
That sounds so badass at the same time. Like I'm like, wow, it's so rock and roll. I love it. But also like, apologies to your assault. That I'm sure a lot of us here can relate to those types of experiences. I would say that as with writing fiction, a lot of fiction is not fiction. It's very similar to what you did. Is everybody's kind of writing from experiences, and I always tell my students to use moments that happened in their life to ground their stories, because you can go through the great scapes of all literature and find the truth in it and find, oh, this is because of their relationship with their grandmother, or this character is based off of their high school crush, and all of those types of things, and how you rearrange things to tell, invent, and process. That's the great part of writing as a whole. And that's how you get really, really strong storytelling, is when you use those moments in your life. That's how you get really powerful stories. But kind of going to your question and backing up to what I was saying before, like again, if you first of all, you don't have to share anything that you make. You can keep it to yourself. I know that we live in a social media age where there's this pressure to share everything, and you don't have to. You should have the desire to make art and to make work just for the sake of making it, and not for the attention of others, because eventually people will move on to the next thing. People are fickle, audiences are fickle, and you can't put all of your worth in whether or not people will read this. You have to be satisfied in making that work yourself. So that's like my soapbox on that. But going from there, again, like if you need to fictionalize your story, like do that. Or don't always feel like you have to share the most gut-wrenching thing about yourself and lay it out there. Or if you need to, know that once you put it out into the universe and once you put it out in the world, it's kind of no longer yours. What is it? The best way to put that is, I guess going back to music, like the Black Flag logo and the Misfits logo. Most people don't even realize those are bands anymore. They've been used so many times that the art is no longer pertaining to the artists anymore. Now it's just symbolism, and it's become symbolism. It's above you now. It's become power. And you sometimes when you put those things out there, you have to subtle with that idea and that notion where once I put this out there, I can't control people's reactions. And if you're putting something really sensitive out there, and if you aren't ready to receive negative reactions of your experience, then again, I would suggest giving it a beat before you put it out there, because people are mean. The internet's mean. People are gonna spit on your work and tell you to shut up and say, well, did you know that more white people are killed by the police and all this kind of stuff? And it's just like, you have to learn to tune that out. So perhaps even if you're building up to that, maybe put a less scary story out in your first work, and build up your skin of receiving criticism from others, because art will always be critiqued, whether good or bad. And sometimes something that may have sounded like a compliment to somebody else may come off as an insult to you. So again, therapy. We got to go back to therapy and building up yourself, and not even let that this goes in one ear, not the other. You just
I was gonna say that it was kind of funny. A few others saying how it was hard for them to write fiction. For me, it was actually kind of the opposite. It was easy for me to sort of process or reflect on experiences, thoughts, and everything that I would have through fiction, or I should say kind of like thinly veiled fiction. And it was easier for me to do that, actually outright express it, because that sort of thin veil of fiction was kind of a way to slightly remove myself from the picture so I could see it more clearly. And as I kind of went on, especially, choosing zines as the way to, the form that I was getting the words out at, I just started thinking about, like, it felt like such a safe space. When I first got back into zines, I went into this, it's in Chicago, Quimby's, favorite bookstore. They have a huge catalog of zines, and went there and just seeing all of these zines and just thinking, like, if I made a zine and wrote about whatever I want, I could just, I could just slip it in here. It could either find an audience, or it would just catch dust there, And I think for me, that was it was kind of liberating to really embrace that, and to know that it was kind of a safe place. It wasn't like I was, it was going to be at every bookstore across the country. It was just, and I think in that situation where you have that mindset of maybe people will read it, or maybe no one will read it, so yes, the audience really needs to read something like that, because it's raw. It's, well, I wouldn't say entirely unedited, but it's not asking for anyone to read it, and moving forward with zines, I think that really inspired me to express myself, like, directly, instead of using fiction as a means to channel it out there. So, yeah.
I'm also definitely for a very long time, and probably still now, like, processing via fiction person, to the point where I didn't realize I was doing that until people started asking me about it. And there's, like, for me, there's the serious side of processing via the serious side of processing via fiction, where it's like I'm actually, like, trying to write about something that happened, but taking a step back, so it's sort of a safer distance. And then there's the side of processing via fiction where someone tells me a story that's, like, really, really funny, but also kind of really embarrassing. And I'm like, can I borrow that? And, and it's like, they're like, yes, as long as you don't tell anyone. Because as a fiction writer, I think that the things that happen in real life are like so much stranger than the things that actually happen in fiction, that it's just like a great resource to draw from. In terms of writing autobio stuff, I don't know why, but I've never really, probably to a fault, I've never really been afraid to share certain personal things. I have no idea why this is, but it's like the one thing that I won't do is I won't directly write about my parents, which is like, I still talk to my parents. It's just, I'm just like, they want to know what I'm doing. So I'm like, I can't, y'all can't read about my thoughts about you, because that's like a conversation that we should have and not something that you should read about in a zine. Yeah. Although when I think about that, I just realized that I accidentally, my uncle, I did not come out as trans to my family, but they found out by reading my comics, and we've just never talked about it. So that's a fun aspect about writing from life, is you can, you know, give it to someone who you're not ready to talk to about something, and maybe they can just suss it out until you're ready to have the conversation.
I have a similar experience, but not as well. Depending on your family, my mom found out I wasn't a virgin anymore through my comics. That's how religious my family is. We just never talked about sex at all, and the comic was literally me on the phone pretending to still be a virgin while talking to my mom, and my mom read that panel in front of me and was like, okay, and then closed the book and bought the book from me still, and was like, keeping this, but now I know. So more of an awkward story, but I also kind of wanted to jump on what everybody else was saying about Finley, what is it, fictionalized history of yourself. And one thing that I kind of discovered myself, which I feel like maybe isn't that much of a discovery, but it was for me. I'm working on a longer form graphic novel, and my original story was going to talk about being sexually assaulted by my teacher in high school. And the more that I like unraveled that story, and this is kind of what you'll discover again when you are telling a story of all of these things that are kind of interconnected into that story. And I didn't realize how much of like, oh, this is also kind of relates to my queer identity, and all these other things are kind of mixing in together. And then it started to unravel too much, and I was like, whoa, okay, I need to take a step back from this and put it over there, because I'm not done processing that, even though it happened in the early 2000s. I realized so I pivoted over, versus doing like an autobiographical longer form story, of doing a fictionalized story of dealing with abuse. And I realized when you write fiction, you can win. And you actually don't have to lose. Like in real, because when I was writing the story before, you know, I'm writing it for younger audiences, and I felt like it was too bleak. And I was like, what if, you know, every time something, oh, you know what? I was watching Showgirls. If any of you have seen that movie, there's a point in the movie where this really beautiful Black girl gets raped in the story. And it's the most horrifying part of the entire movie. And almost like, why did you put that in the movie? We didn't even need that. And I am getting to this point as a consumer where I'm getting exhausted at watching Black bodies being called Black bodies, Black people being dehumanized, and being kind of just only seeing abuse and trauma and rape and death and murder by the hands of our oppressors. And I was like, what if this time in this story we actually win? And that's fine, because it's fiction, and in this universe Black people don't lose. And you can do that, and you can kind of reclaim your power through fiction. You don't have to tell your trauma and just change everybody's names and the trauma still ends traumatically. You can actually say what you wanted to say to that person in that moment. Fight for yourself the way you wanted to fight for yourself in that moment. I've even changed something where I had wished that my friends stuck up for me versus sticking up for my abuser. In the fictionalized version, they stick up for me, and it felt good and it was healing. And you can heal yourself through your fiction. It doesn't have to always be so bleak.
I think something else, going back to another point that Bianca made, is I think we really underestimate the power of reception when you put something real out into the world. Like, at least for me, a lot of my work when I was in school was just like these streams of consciousness. And through those streams of consciousness, I was able to figure out that I actually had like some mental health things going on, because people would point out like, this is like a great use of this repetition, or this is like really great, like cyclical, and like showing people like feeling trapped. And I was just like, oh, that's just how I think. So then maybe like this wasn't like a literary device, like this is just the way that thoughts come out of my brain. And there was one particular time that I wrote this flash piece that was just literally about like the way that I go through life thinking and like how my thoughts process. And my professor, like, she hyped me up, okay? Like I was thinking like I am brilliant, like I'm about to be a writer, like zeitgeist over here. And I sent it to my mom because I wanted, you know, I wanted her approval and her opinion. And I was so hyped to get on this phone call with my mom, like my parents were so supportive. And she was sobbing because that piece made her think I was suicidal. And it's just like,
no.
that moment was just like, damn, you know, when a thought leaves your head, it's really out. It's out completely, and it's going to be received however it's received.
That is so true. Just to take it back to something that Bianca had said earlier, one observation I think I've had just from the protests and everything going on, how the impact of Black Death, and how, why does it take someone dying? Why does it take the loss of life for people to all of a sudden be like, oh, learning, you know, muted but still listening, you know, and all of these, like, you know, why does it take the loss of life for people to be like, okay, well, let me see what the issue is. You know, you have people, you know, never talked about racism, you know, now all of a sudden they care, and all these companies doing it to save face. And, you know, it's just been one of my biggest just observations, you know, why does it need to go that far for you to care about like issues? You know, why does it, you know, all these little minor changes, and, you know, companies, you know, not using master bedroom and all this shit, like, you know, like stuff like that that doesn't fucking matter, you know, why all of that wouldn't, even just on like the little things that don't really matter, that stuff even wouldn't have happened, those conversations wouldn't even have been had, you know, George Floyd not die. You know, it's just been just an interesting, just when you said that, you know, about just relating to just Black grief, I just hate how it just takes that for people to all of a sudden care about us and our issues, you know, when we've been saying this forever. And it's like, oh, now it's like, oh my God, you know, we're now going to donate money and we're now going to focus on diversity. Just, I don't know, it's just an interesting take that, you know, I've had. It's just mind-boggling to me. But you know, I guess just to go, you know, just to go on that, you know, you all use your zines and your art to share different points of view, different information, all of that. What are some ways people can, to be effective in using zine making to, you know, share ideas and, you know, your story, you know, what makes an effective zine? You know, what makes an effective piece of work, you know, in your opinion?
I think for me, a big part of it is just that I get to set the rules. Like I don't have to follow any sort of blueprint. I don't have to follow any sort of tradition, any sort of custom, any convention that is made. I don't have to follow it. Like I recently put out a call because I just wanted some writers, like some freelance writers, Black femmes. And people were like, oh, you know, like I've never written for anywhere before, or I've never done this before. And I'm just like, fuck that. Like, I don't care what you've done before. I don't care what you do after. Like, what's your idea? That's fucking dope. Like, please write that for me. I love it. And I think there's something really liberating about you being at the center and you being in charge of what makes someone qualified for you, or like what makes something interesting to you, and like what you think should go into this page versus that page, or like what a layout is for you, you know? Like, I think just having that type of control and like realizing while having it how rare that is something that's made it a really powerful experience for me.
I think for me, the most important thing is just to really express that sort of the raw emotion, raw ideas out there. That's what first got me, you know, really into zines, is just reading these so intense, yeah, like I said, just raw emotions. And, you know, sometimes the words were just scribbled out, not even like, you know, done by typewriter or computer, just scribbled out. And sometimes they were really hard to read, or you couldn't read them at all, but you just kind of followed along with the emotion to it, and the words you were able to like grab onto. It just really just hit you in the chest. And I think, you know, writing that way, sort of writing straight from the heart, and having that emotion just, you know, bleed out into the page. I think eventually you're able to find your, you know, just really find your voice, really hone that down. And I don't mean necessarily in a like audience pleasing way, but just in a sense where you're clearly portraying, like, you know, all of those experiences, thoughts, you know, reflections, everything exactly how you mean it onto the page. And I that's what I love the most. That's what I think is the most effective. Yeah, and when I read a new zine, when I, you know, hunt around for zines at a zine fest, that's the sort of thing that I'm looking for. So.
I agree with everyone's points so far. And kind of just jumping off of those points again, just like radical honesty is kind of the one thing I'm always drawn to. I'm a sucker for any sort of slice of life narrative, and I know that's my own taste, but even beyond that, like, and kind of jumping on what you were saying before about Black grief and like, why are we only paying attention to Black stories, even though we've been talking about this, like we were talking about this like on the Amistad on our way here. I think one thing that's really exciting to me is when I can read stories that have either nothing to do with fear of Blackness at all, or your Blackness is still there, but it's not the focus of the story. And like I want to, like, I found zines about like, you're really obsessed with, I'm trying to think of something off the top of my head. You're really, oh wait, I would love to read the zine. I discovered a TikTok of this person who likes to go out into the woods and gather whatever they can find from the woods and then teach you how to cook with it, and like stuff like that is really cool to me. Like, what are you obsessed with? What are you really into? It doesn't have to, I remember I had this student and she was writing a comic. I gave them an assignment to do a 4-panel comic, and she was writing about walking past a group of students and hearing them say nigga, and they were white, and her like lecturing them on why they shouldn't say that. And I asked her, I was like, do you want to write about this? Or do you feel like you have to write about this because you were one of the few Black female students in this class, and you feel like everything you write about has to be about your Black experience? And the final assignment that she turned in was about a train ride she took through Thailand, and it was so much better. Like, talk about whatever you want about, but let it be truth. And not to keep ranting, but you can always tell when Black people talk about Blackness when they don't want to talk about Blackness, because it doesn't even come off authentic when we say it. It feels very commercial and packaged, and we're using words like queen, and we don't even talk like that. We sound like Black Twitter, and no one talks like that in real life. So it's just like, if you don't want to talk about that, don't talk about it. You're Black by default. You're Black. You're Black. Like, you don't have to write about it. You can write about you're the best pizza crust you've ever made, and I would love to read that.
Yeah, I can't think of anything to add onto anything that's been said. I just love that people can make zines about whatever the fuck they want. And it's like, yeah, I just love that I can just pick up a zine and it'll be like, here's a bunch of sex dreams that I had. I'm like, yeah, hell yeah. Like, that's something that I don't know, that I would never think about, but I'm gonna think about it now. And it's, I don't know, I like that. Yeah.
Going off of that, I'm just curious, what materials do you guys use for your zines and for your artistic projects? What, software? I'm sure, people in the attendees are wondering, like, what do you have any recommendations, whether it be markers, whatever the case may be, what do you use? What does your, setup look like?
Well, my setup, it kind of changed. Like at first I was just using paper, a typewriter, some markers, and just send all that to the Kinko or FedEx Express or whatever, and just do it that way. Later that kind of changed because I work in an office and there are amazing supplies that nobody uses, so I'll just like type stuff out there.
Free 99.
Get to work. Yeah. Yeah. And print stuff out there and just exploit it as much as I can. But yeah, I usually try to keep that sort of, I don't know, I'm stuck in the 90s, so it's always got that 90s aesthetic, I always kind of work on that, so yeah.
I take a lot of photos on disposable cameras. So I have a lot of like actual like photos that I'll use and like cut out and put together with like magazine clippings or like clippings from, a poster or something like that. Like I do a lot of almost like collage type of things.
For me, it kind of depends on, since I do drawing stuff, it kind of depends on what I'm in the mood for using as like an art medium and what for me is the most fun at the time. So for a while I was only doing like straight like ink stuff, and right now I'm just doing pencil work. But I feel like, jumping off of what Jonas said, the like best, not a tool, but the best resource. This is something that I learned from I was at a bar with my dad years ago, and I was talking to one of his friends who was like, oh, I used to like be a punk in the 80s and we would make zines, and you would just like go to your friend who had an office job and be like, yo, can you print these for me? I'll buy you a beer. And I remember I was young and I was like, what the hell is he talking about? And then like I got older and I was like, oh, the printer friend. That's what you need. Like, I was like, oh, that's the best resource if you're making zines, is the friend who can secretly print stuff for you. That's what, if you want to make zines, you got to look for that friend and be very good friends with them.
Or sometimes your library will print things for you free or cheap, depending on what part of the world you live in.
That's true.
That's true.
That's where I got my start, where she wants attention. She's jealous. She hears all these voices. That's where I got my start when I was like, making Riot Girl zines in the 8th grade. But now, I brought my supplies over here. I like to use all this cat hair. These are like my go-to drawing supplies. This is a white eraser. I always use a photo blue pencil. So that way, are you finally done? Thank you. So you can see now, look what she did. All this hair. Okay. Anyway, photo blue pencil, eraser, and I always like to use Kuretake or Taobao calligraphy pens. I also bought some really cool new ink pens. I have no idea what brand these are, but calligraphy pens that are usually like Sumi or India ink.
That's the
anyone
shit.
can read those. And these are not that bad. I mean, they're maybe $2 to $3 a pen, which may feel lofty at first, but making that investment, having like the control. And I want to see if I can pull something out real quick. Here we go. Having that control, I can control my line weight and all those things. And here's a comic about the police. Trying to see if I have something a little bit more finished. Again, like I can control all of that. And that's what I really, I'm very old school. I like to use Bristol board. I'll even show you folks the brand of Bristol board, Smooth. That's my go-to, but I also work off of a tablet. I work digitally because of, you know, the environment. As much as I wanted to be like an old school punk that like only worked with pens and inks all the time, I don't want to keep killing all these trees. So yeah, I work digitally and pencils. But I'm trying to think if there's anything else handy that I can offer you. But I would also suggest, I'm working at my desk. I have all of my supplies here. Nothing reachable. Okay. I started working with Sharpies. I started working just with any old sketchbook that my mom would get half off of using a 50% off Joann's coupon and be good to go. I think sometimes we get stuck on the technical aspects of things that we don't allow the work to speak for itself. And I still got cat hair on me. Some of the best work I have ever written or ever read by somebody else, it was made very simple means. Like it was literally just like made with spit, a hope and a dream, and a powerful story. And even with comics, you don't have to be the most technical illustrator. Some of the worst comics I've ever read were the most beautifully drawn. And I was like, wow, you're an amazing illustrator, but a terrible storyteller. And that's true. Sometimes you may learn that yourself. Sometimes you may learn that you are very good at writing stories and terrible at drawing, or you're very good at drawing and terrible at telling stories, and you can work together with somebody else. There's also the power of union and friendship and collaboration and things like that. But yeah, like you don't have to be the best of anything. You just got to be passionate about what you're writing about. That's my soapbox.
Yeah, most definitely. Going off of that, Tyler, there was something you said earlier, because I know you have submissions open, I think, for an upcoming issue, and you were talking about how people were saying like they've never done it before, they were, you know, really nervous, things of that nature. And it got me thinking about how I was part of a previous, I was not part of it, but I was watching this online conference, and one of the panelists was Ashley Chubby Bunny, who's she works kind of within the like kink BDSM space, and she's a Black femme, and the moderator was this white woman. And the moderator, she was very well meaning, but she was kind of talking about like creating your own, because Ashley Chubby Bunny, along with I think Venus Cuffs, they put on their own parties. And you know, Ashley was talking about the difficulties being Black in that certain space, trying to put on, you know, your own events. And it got me thinking when you said that about you know, whenever marginalized groups feel underrepresented, the urge is to go ahead and create your own and start, you know, your own path and go your own way. But a point, you know, Ashley was making was that, you know, was telling the moderator was that that's very dismissive, you know, low key, saying
Very.
to, you know, and, you know, she caught that. And because even, you know, I was like, ooh, spicy. But she was like, you know, it was low-key dismissive of her to say that, because, you know, she was saying when she was trying to find spaces for this party, the struggle she had with landlords, like one of like event owner told her, oh, is this going to be like a hood party, you know, like that. You know, it was just like, you know, there's struggles that come with doing things on your own. So I was wondering if you guys can all, I guess, speak about the difficulty, you know, being, you know, Black, you know, creating your own and doing your own thing along the way.
Yeah, I can talk about this actually way more from the music side, because you know, Pink Boot also puts on live shows, and that's a big part of it. And before that, I manage an artist, And we were in Minnesota for a festival that she was playing. And, you know, I have on like my artist pass. She has on her artist pass. We're all like ready to go. And I went over to the merch table to like set something up for her. And this other manager came up to me, this white man, and just handed me some shirts from his artist for me to fold. Like no introduction, like no anything. And like you see I'm wearing an artist pass, like you know I'm not I don't work at this merch table. And it's just, I noticed in a lot of these spaces that I'm in relating to music, people have such an intense sense of entitlement, like just regardless of skill or talent or anything. And I think that was a big thing for me to see, to be able to overcome my own imposter syndrome, because I realized that the people that I'm feeling inferior to are less qualified than I am, but they're here acting like they run and own this entire festival. So like that right there pretty much snapped me out of like any imposter syndrome I had related to that. But yeah, you know, it's difficult to constantly be in positions where people are dismissing you and not taking you seriously and assuming things about you. But like at a certain point, I had to just accept like that is the reality of the industry that I am currently in. And if I want to like create space in this, and if I want to be successful in it, then I'm gonna have to learn how to deal with that. And I do, and it's like it's hard, and I don't like it. And if I had the option to, you know, make my own venues and to have my own promo team and to do all of that, of course I would. Like there's no shortage of talent, there's no shortage of Black potential, there's no shortage of Black creativity, but there is a shortage of capital, you know, there's a shortage of structural help and support. Like that, I think the idea of, oh, well, just go make your own is so incredibly dismissive. And I also just think it's just so intellectually dishonest when you think about the fact that like at least Black Americans, like how many generations of disposable income have we even had, you know, to be able to set up systems like this. So I that's something that's always irked me when people say that. Like it's ridiculous, honestly.
I don't know if anybody has any additional thoughts.
I do. I'm trying to form them right now here.
I see you like.
Well, I think with at least with my experiences in zines, it really the difficulty level of it I think depends on what your intentions are with making zines, because anybody can, you know, make a zine and either, you know, share it with their friends or try to distribute it or do nothing with it, you know. And there's that creative process and that releasing it as you may sort of thing, or there's actually not just producing the work but wanting to be a part of the community as well. And once you say that you want to be a part of the community, I think that's where it gets potentially like difficult, because the more sort of ingrained in the community that you are, they're the more like expectations, like, you know, no matter what you wrote previously, once people know you, suddenly it's like, oh, well, obviously he's, you know, only going to talk about racial issues, or they're only going to write about blah, 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 blah. And, you know, it just kind of, in a sense, you know, sort of confines you, you know, and you have to either break out of that, or if that's what you focused on in general, then I guess you just go with it. But yeah, I think that's the hardest part of my experience is being a part of that community, but still feeling the need to write about what, you know, what's most important to me in as opposed to writing about what I think is expected, you know, at this point. So
I think a difficult thing for me is that even sometimes when you want to be a part of Black spaces within industries, there are people that do hold more power than you do that are a lot more interested in adjacent to whiteness. And there are these situations where it's just like you realize that not everyone is going to support you, especially as a Black woman. And like I can tell you, like as a Black woman in music, that a lot of Black men benefit from certain stereotypes that will help them in that type of environment, especially now that like hip hop and urban are like the biggest genres. But Black women don't. And I think that there are a lot of times where when those Black men can then value their proximity to whiteness over being there for you or like protecting you or supporting you. And that's something that has always been painful for me, but I think even more so because of the industry that I work in.
I don't have much to add. I just relate to what Tyler's saying about this experience. I don't work in music directly. I do a lot of comics on musicians and interview a lot of musicians and then illustrate the story. But yeah, a lot of things that you're speaking on, I'm just like, ooh, yeah, come on. And yeah, a lot, and even in, I've noticed a lot in just the alt community in general, sometimes not all skin folk is kin folk. And that's always heartbreaking when you experience that, where you're like, oh, you're weird like me. Oh no, you want to be white, bye. Yeah, that's always, it's really hard to go through time and time again. But yeah, and especially in the alternative community, Black women sometimes like don't exist at all. And I remember growing up and looking for those that type of representation and not really being able to find it. And people were like, oh, well, you know, like Black Flag has a Black member and all these other bands. But again, like Black men accessibility into these communities have always been easier than for Black women. And I don't want to get into that too much right now, but it's a whole thing, a whole painful thing. And yeah, it can be silencing and frustrating. One of my favorite side notes or anecdotes whenever I write about crushing on a cool and cute alternative dude, and people are like, well, that's what you get. And like, and they tell me, oh, well, I don't date Black women. People always be like, well, that's what you get for trying to date that white boy. I was like, he wasn't white. And there
I was thinking about, Jonas, what you were saying about like when you're in a community and like you're almost expected to write about certain stuff. This is kind of like, I don't know, maybe like tangentially related, but I found that in a lot of like zine scenes and fests and whatever, it's almost like you have to trick people. You have to trick white and non-Black people into being interested in what you're doing by like not letting on that what you're doing is like Black stuff until they started reading it. Like I fucking, the first zine that I like put out about being into a white dude, which is like definitely explicitly like about being a Black person. I gave it, the name I gave it was, the title of it was A Queer Femme Guide to White Boy Thirst, because at that time that was like how I was identifying. And it was just like so many like white queers would pick it up and be like, yeah, me too. Because they saw the title like Queer Femme and they would be like, that's me. And I was like, I mean, at least thanks for your $5, I guess. Like, I got you to pick it up. Maybe one day you'll read it and be like, wait a minute, I can't relate to this. But like, I don't know. It's like you have to trick people, which is really fucked up when you think about it, and something that has like pissed me off for a very long time. Because it's like, I'm never going to stop writing about being Black and all the shit that comes with that. But like, I guess I got to give it a catchy name in order for white folk to give a shit.
Yeah, you know, and that that sort of thing has only been for me an issue since, like I said, I really worked within, I guess, the zine community. Because going to Zine Fest, I'll tell you, like, it, I have so many zines out, and it didn't really, the cover, the subject matter didn't really even seem to matter, because at the Zine Fest, it seems like 90% of the people there could tell they wanted my zine just by looking at me, so it's like a good chunk of the time people would just like walk right past me, just like, oh yeah, that, yeah. And then another portion of the time, people would intentionally come to my booth just because they thought like, oh, well, this is going to enlighten me on blackness. Let me do that. So it's, and then they'll read through my stuff and it'll be like something on, being an aging punk or something. And it's like, oh yeah, sorry. So,
God,
so yeah,
got me again.
I have a similar story about my first crush, who was white. And again, it's a similar story of like, well, you think it's about me having a crush on this white boy, but it's actually about like the lack of Black representation in the media and how I've learned to hate myself. I don't anymore. I'm saying like when you're little, you're like, oh, is there something wrong with me? But every time someone picks up that comic, and if they're not Black and they get to the end, and that drives me crazy. Also, when people go to your table and they read the whole comic and they put it down,
yes.
they would always get to the end and then go, that got really dark, and then close it and then put it on my table and then back away. And I'm like, well, of course it's dark. Did you see me? But yeah, but yeah, you gotta trick them. I think that's my whole game. That's my whole scam. Has been tricking people and being like, hey, you want to read about this thing that's totally relatable? Psych, it's actually about the construction and institution of racism in society and why my mental illness is actually a reflection of. It's just like you gotta suck them in somehow, and that's how I teach my students. You gotta get that hook into people to get their attention, that elevator pitch. And then really, because with that common ground that you can get people to take down that first layer of judgment and just kind of what is not, if it's not racism, it's the other word, prejudice, that they have against you, if they can have that accountability. And I write for Black people, even though a lot of white people read my work, but I write for Black people. But because of, oh wow, it turns out that I also use the bathroom like everyone else. White people have found value in my work, and they relate to it because they also poop, and we can put that together.
Yeah, I'm writing a comic series that's based in Pittsburgh, and it's about Black queer people, but like the predominant queer community in Pittsburgh is just a bunch of white folk. And I was like, oh, if I make it too obvious, you're not going to read this. So I just call it, in Pittsburgh, everybody calls each other, instead of y'all, it's yins.
Yeah, yes, because my family's from Pittsburgh.
So I just call it Yin City because people who are from Pittsburgh are obsessed with being from Pittsburgh. So as soon as they see that, they're like, oh, it's about Pittsburgh? I got to read this. Gotcha. It's about Black people. Yeah, white folk are real foolish sometimes.
Oh man, this just got me thinking as you guys are talking about like getting people to read your stuff. I'm very curious because I'm very new to like the world of zines and independent artistry, but like, is there like a making it big in zines? Like, are there like zine famous I don't know. I'm very new to this. I don't know if there's like, I don't know. I'm very new to this, but is there like, I don't know, is there something considered making it big? Or like, I don't know if it's like maybe booking like the major zine festivals. Like, I don't know. Like, is there something similar to that?
I mean, there are zinesters that are just well known because they've been around forever. But apart from that, I think what I love about it, yeah, there are certain people that that reach a point where they get more of a following, you know, more people know who they are. But I think what I love about zines is that just kind of comes and goes, and that those people are on the same, you know, even well-known zinesters are on the same, you know, playing field as, you know, someone that's still in high school, made their very first zine, you know, and was as that one to bring to the fest, you know, like they're on the same playing field. In fact, you know, I mean, you know, not to just focus on Zine Fest, but I guess I'm gonna for a minute here. Going to a Zine Fest, you know, tabling it doesn't really matter if you made, you know, dozens or hundreds of zines and they've been like distributed all around the world, or if it's your very first one. Like the person like 3 tables down from you who have never gone to a Zine Fest ever before, they only have like 3 zines, you know, handwritten. They have like 5 copies of each. They might actually sell more than you do, you know, and you never know. And that's what I love about it, is that, you know, people are going into it. They're not going into it with that same sort of consumerist mind of like, let me look for all the celebrity zinesters, because there are none to be found, you know.
I feel like that's
yeah, sorry. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I feel like that's the whole point of zines, is that like nobody's famous. You're just a bunch of weirdos with a stapler.
Exactly.
I feel like from a comic scene perspective, it's like there's like comic or zine comics, and then there's like alt comics. And like someone can get famous as like an alt comics person, but at that point you're in alt comics and you're not in zines, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of a famous zine person sounds like really evil to me for some reason.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's more about just don't chase capitalism and all that, but instead like having your own ambitions and markers for yourself, and let those be your success stories, and accepting success and whatever that may be. And it may not be this big capitalistic ending where you become a millionaire and make other people suffer for you to be rich, but instead your goal could be like, I finally stopped making work for myself, but I got into Quimby's, or I got into Bluestockings. And that's like, for me, those are markers in my career. To be able to perform this time last year at Bluestockings was like, I cried. That was so important to me. And it's like, that stuff to me is always way cooler than like some of those other, I don't know, clout points that you can get. And also like, who cares? Because I really like what Jonas was saying, where, you know, somebody from high school will come out with something, and that stuff will humble you, because you'll be at one point in your career and you'll be like, yeah, some kid will write something more concise and well put together and honed in than you could ever formulate your thoughts.
Yeah.
And that's that point in your life where you will be challenged to be humble and accept that, and not be like, back in my day. No, you accept their work and you're like, wow, and you learn from them and you lift as you climb. And that's the beauty of zines. Is somebody twice your age or half your age will write something that'll inspire you, and people your own age will inspire you. And it's about grassroots, it's about community, it's about these things that we fight for in our ethos, in our rights, in our liberation. Of an equal playing field where we have equity and everyone's voice is important, and not just one that we ooh and ah over, that is they are special somehow because they don't poop. I don't know why I keep going to poop, but
I feel like every zinester's goal should be to sell one of their zines to Elon Musk. I feel like that's when you've made it.
No.
That's when you've made it to the top of the zine pantheon.
I hope that he never knows that I exist. That would be
I think I'm going to go ahead and shift, because we have some questions from the audience in the Q&A. So let's see. Someone asked, What is everyone reading right now, or what have you read recently that you loved?
I'm guessing zine specific, huh?
You can make it a book too.
What a shady way to answer that question I just did there. I guess zines, huh? Turn on this light really quick.
I can't even lie. I haven't read a damn thing in the last like 3 months. I mean, and I'm an avid reader. I you know, I usually in a usual year I read something like, I don't know, 75 to 100 books. But yeah, this year so far it's been more like one. You know, and that's something I totally want to change. But you know, when times are what they are and you're just in survival mode, sometimes things just get put on hold. So.
Anyone else reading anything interesting, cool? I also have not read anything at all since quarantine started, so no shame.
I'm trying to see if I should go grab something from my zine table here.
Oh. I mean, I've been reading The Dispossessed by Ursula Le Guin, but that doesn't have pictures in it. I'm trying to think of something that's like an actual zine.
Oh, you know what? This is something you can get this at Quimby's in Chicago. I actually really love this series. It's called I'm So Punk, and it comes with all of these little things like wristbands, and I like how well thought out it's put together. But it's a collection of zines by comics artist Caroline Cash, and they're just like a collection of punk zines about how terrible in the punk community. So if you hate men, this series is for you. And I love it because it helps you realize how much of everything that a white boy punk has said to you is just they all learn it somehow. They take a course and then they like speak it back to everyone else, and you're like, how do you all speak the same? But yeah, there's a bunch of them in there, and they're really cute. And I just, again, I went to school for graphic design, so I'm a packaging nerd, and this is, I just wanted to show this to y'all so you could see some of like the extra little effort that you could put something in. Like, this is like so cheap. These are just like a little brown paper bag. You can actually take a few from the restaurant. I've done that before. If you want to use it for packaging, just take some from the pizza restaurant. Be like, oh, you don't need these.
The last really good thing I read, it wasn't a zine, but I just finished reading Lenny Bruce's autobiography. It's called How to Talk Dirty and Seduce People, and I highly recommend it. It's just a trip. It's a cool book.
What was the name of the book?
How to Talk Dirty and Seduce People. And influence people, sorry. Yeah.
All right, next question's by T. Do you ever have to do research for zines/writing, and what does that look like?
Can you ask it again? I couldn't understand you.
Sure. T asks, do you ever have to do research for zine/writing, and what does that look like?
Yes. My answer is yes. It's just asking people lots of questions. And going on Reddit. Yeah. Because there's like a Reddit for everything. So if you Google like a specific enough research question or topic, there will be a Reddit for it. So trusting in Reddit probably too much, and asking other people lots and lots of questions.
For some of my, sorry, I wasn't sure I was gonna talk. For some of my comics, my like historic work. I like to do research. I'm a nerd. I'm a big nerd. You can give me some encyclopedias and I'll be lost for a few hours. And with some of more of like the music writing that I do, I like to be very precise and fact check everything. I'm gonna go through multiple sources, go use the Wayback Machine and pull old issues of NME or Punk Planet or whatever it is, and it kind of gather all those things together. Oh my God, one of my favorite resources is Pinterest. And I feel like a lot of people dismiss Pinterest as a place for white moms to plan the wedding they didn't have, but instead, Pinterest is a really, really great resource for like old like punk and zine stuff. Like people upload so much stuff on there, rare photos and all types of things. And if I was like looking for flyers from the Rock Against Racism protests in England in the late 70s, and it's kind of hard to find some of that stuff, but people are like, I was there, and they'll just scan it and they'll put it on there. And because Pinterest is a really great place for people of a certain age demographic, whether they be Gen Xers or boomers or even older, where they're like, oh, this is where I'll share my things, not so much on Instagram or Twitter, but they'll just scan things on Pinterest and be like, y'all wanna look at this? And people put on their boards and so forth. But Pinterest is a secret just source of images and research and flyers, and you could lose hours in just flyers.
Okay.
I end up on like, Pinterest is a really good one. I forgot about Pinterest. I draw, since I'm drawing a comic that takes place in Pittsburgh, I've had to like do field research and go to places to see what they look like. And I had to draw a view of a street, but so I had to draw like a view up a street. And when I went there to take a picture to do the field research, I was like, oh fuck, this condo wasn't here before. And I had to just try and do research to figure out what the street looked like before, like the year. I had to find the year that the condo was built. And then I had to try and find like pictures of the street from then. And then I found out that Google Maps, as evil as Google is, Google Maps saves street views from specific years. So if you want to see a street in 2009, Google Maps might have it. And so that was what I had to do to figure out what the street looked like when there wasn't a damn condo there. So research is everything.
Yeah, I don't, going forward, I don't so much, I guess, research things. It's, especially since a lot of my work, it's based on just thoughts and experiences and stuff. The only time, I guess, any sort of research, happens for me is when I'm trying to like fact check something, like, some very specific memory, in some year, and it's like, oh wait, was that 98 or 99 or something like that? Maybe I'll fact check that. But as far as like researching from the subject, for a subject, it's I mean, I had been sort of mapping out what I wanted to write for a long time anyway. So yeah, there's no like research leading up to that. It's just letting the idea form in my head. So yeah.
Great. We have another question from Macy. What are some zine fests you would recommend attending when gathering is safe again?
In the year 2057.
Well, I mean, yeah, I was organizing one for Chicago at the Midwest Perzine Fest that was supposed to be in October, but now it probably will not. Outside of that, like, I mean, my two favorites of, in every year is Chicago Zine Fest and LA Zine Fest. Both are huge. I mean, I could see how for people just attending it, it would be incredibly overwhelming. But at the same time, I think if you can get over that and just like wander around, explore sort of fight that sort of guilt of having to buy something every time you come up to someone's table. Like if you can get past that, I think just being in that environment with such rich creative energy, I mean, I think it's incredible, and I've never felt that more than at Chicago Zine Fest and LA Zine Fest. Those are probably the two that I would, if you can get over the anxiety of it, those would be the two that I would highly recommend.
Chicago Zine Fest is dope. I really liked it. It's good. I like Pittsburgh Zine Fair a lot, but it's because I'm a Pittsburgh kid. I say that, I'm from Philly. But yeah, Pittsburgh Zine Fair. It's way smaller. It's definitely like a baby compared to Chicago Zine Fest. I can't think of any other ones other than those two. St. Louis had a small press expo. I don't know. This is one of those things where I'm like, is this zines or is this people making books, if that makes sense? I don't know. I'm just going to say Chicago and Pittsburgh Zine Fairs.
Oh, yeah. This one just came to mind. The Dear Diary Zine Fest. That's a really, really good one. It's out in the Bay. I never can tell what. Oh wait, no, Berkeley. That's where it is. Because I know people in the West Coast will just say like, oh yeah, it's by the Bay, by the Bay. Like, I never knew what that meant. But anyway, yeah, in Berkeley, the Dear Diary Zine Fest was great. It wasn't huge. It was like just the right size, and it felt like everybody that attended like knew what they were in for. They understood. There weren't really many people coming in saying like, oh, what's a zine? I don't understand. What are these things? Like people knew it, and it was just a great environment.
Bluestockings would have had their amazing festival that they had last year. I think that one's a really great one to attend if you want to see people actually doing the work to make sure that marginalized genders and voices and races are being represented, and it's not like 90% white dudes and like, oh, here's the token Black person we chose. So if you want to see that, then like Bluestockings is good. I would also say if you are into comics or like alternative comics and indie comics, there's probably a festival within your range. Just make sure that when you look, it says alternative or indie comics or underground comics festival, and it's not just a Comic Con, because that is a whole nother realm, and that's where you're gonna get Cape Comics, that's where you're gonna get your Supermans, your Batmans, your Marvel, your Disney, and all of that. Sometimes at those larger comic festivals, there will be like an artist alley that'll have indie press people there, but I stopped doing those shows because people weren't there to see me and I wasn't there to see them, and it was kind of like a mutual breakup. But more of the indie circuit, because at the Indie Comic Fest, you'll get comics and zines. Similar to Zine Fest, you'll get comics and zines, and the apex of those two things together. But yeah, I know a lot of people, and I'm gonna say cake. I'm gonna say cake for this one. Yeah.
I knew you were gonna say cake.
Cake's been good. We could talk privately about other festivals that are local to me, but yeah, cake's a good one.
Awesome. Rudy wants to know, what artists do you guys look up to?
Nobody. I'm the best.
No, I'm not gonna say that. How corny. Well, I'm just kidding. If you have religion and that's important too, that's cool. I really like. I'm gonna go grab it. I've gotten better at not looking up to white people, but they were the only ones who were published so many years ago, so that's kind of all the reference we have. But I really like Julie Doucet's work. I like how gritty and textured it is. I like how grossly she draws men. It's kind of hard for you to see, but she talks about a lot of bad experiences that she had being a woman, and it's kind of funny when you read this and realize that it went over a lot of people's heads when she wrote this, because this is pretty old. I want to say 1993. So when she wrote this, a lot of like the other big names in the comics industry, underground alternative comics industry, they loved Julie, but I don't think they realized how poorly she spoke on how terrible those men could be. And there's a lot of abuse, and I really like the way she talks about the way she frames her stories, is how naive she is when those moments happen to her. And if you're not paying attention, you would almost kind of feel like, oh, maybe she's happy that thing happened. It's not. It's just kind of like when you are 14 and a man whips it out, you're kind of like, oh, okay, well, there's that. And you go on with your day. And then it takes until you're 30 writing this comic, realizing like, oh, shit, that was bad. That should have never happened. And this is the trauma that's built from there. So I kind of aspire to make work like hers, and a lot of my Sad Boy comic series is kind of reflective of Julie's work. But yeah, anything that's just like heavy inks and just gritty and grungy, I adore it. And I can't really think, again, zines, like, I mean, I love the work of my friends. Like Here's Wash Day by Jamila and Robin, which this got picked up to a full series now, which I'm really excited about. And then this one, the Ignats last year.
Emma Jane.
Yeah. Trans Girls Hit the Town. This is another really, and it's got the official sticker on it. This is like works by my friends, but I look up to them because it's exciting to see other people's stories. Because we're in quarantine. I'm here writing about myself. I'm here talking about myself. I want to read other people's stories. I'm tired of listening to me. Like I wanna be inspired by other people's things that are not related to me at all.
I'm definitely inspired by a lot of Japanese boys love artists. Specifically, like right now, Ki Kana is a really big deal to me. They just draw like a slice of life, very like beautifully detailed comic with like drama, but very like low key, just normal people drama. And a lot of music. I don't know if we're just thinking about visual artists, but I want to go into music. Is like lately, like a lot of the musician Jeff Rosenstock has been like a really big inspiration for me lately, and like outlaw country makes me want to draw a lot and write stuff. So
Yeah, for me it's music too. Like the artist of my life is Tyler the Creator, and he has been since I was like, I don't even know, maybe like 16. I think that's when he released Bastard. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I went to this really small, really religious, really white, really racist high school, and I was very mercilessly bullied by boys, mostly actually. And it was around the same time that I think some of my mental health things started to appear, as they often do in your late teens. And I just remember being 16 and like sitting at the edge of my bed in my dorm room, because I went to a boarding school, and like this was like, I really like I thought that I was gonna kill myself. Like that was it. And Goblin was released that night, and I listened to it over and over and like yelled and screamed and like just I just felt every emotion that you could possibly feel, like listening to that album and feeling out of place and like feeling like I was weird and broken and all kinds of stuff. And so like that album really in a literal way saved my life. So I always have such a deep connection to it and such a deep respect for his journey as an artist, like from where he started with Bastard to Igor being like an absolute masterpiece, and even the stuff with like Loiter Squad and his like merge with Golf LaFleur and like Golf Wang and all of that stuff. And he actually came into the office on my 25th birthday, and I was like losing my mind, and I got to tell him to his face, like, you know, Goblin saved my life, like thank you for recording that. And it was just like such a full circle moment, I think, for me and for my life, that just no other artist will ever be able to impact me in the way that Tyler the Creator has.
I'm glad that album was there for you. That's dope.
Yeah,
Me too.
sure. Yeah, I think for me, it's kind of broken up into the zinesters that inspire me versus like other media, you know, movies, music, etc. Because the zinesters that really inspire me, they all pretty much, you know, they're my friends now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of part of why what I loved about it is, or what I love about zines is that's, you know, you read an amazing zine, you read something that hits you really hard, and 9 times out of 10 the person that made it is totally accessible. Like, you know, you could write to them, find them online, see them at the next Zine Fest or something. They're there. They're not, you know, they're not removed like you know, like in a more mainstream media. So yeah, so I really dig that. But obviously there's stuff in the more mainstream media that's really inspiring to me. I'm trying to think. Like comic wise, Linda Berry is probably at the top of my list. Like I'll read anything she does, you know. In movies, I've liked the director David Lowery. He did an amazing movie called A Ghost Story that I was just addicted to for a while. And then with books, it varies. Before, I mean, I was on a really big James Baldwin kick before I stopped reading forever, I guess. But yeah, he's another you know, artist or writer that I can pretty much pick out anything from his at a bookstore, library, or something, and I know it's going to be quality.
So good. He's just so good.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, I think we have the last audience question. So from Anonymous, how do you raise money for zine production? Do you pre-sell or raise money another way? Do you ever profit?
Uh-oh, somebody's coming into my house.
I can just say no, I do not profit. Even though like I have free reign at the office to print out like, you know, 100 copies in a given, like over a span of like 2 days if I want to. But even then, like I'm usually like mailing out the zines to people, so that totally adds up. If I go to a zine fest, I usually, you know, have to pay for the plane ticket, and you know, the profits I make at the zine fest 100% do not cover that plane ticket. You know, at most it covers like the meals for the rest of that trip. So I know people that do make money off of their zines, and that's wondrous for those people. But yeah, that I've never been in that position. So, and I really don't understand how you can be in that position unless you charge like quite a bit for your zines and really have to hustle. So.
That's dope.
So good. No, you go.
I was gonna say that that's part of why I try to stay. I mean, I do go to fests and shows and whatever that are quite a ways away, and I do make a profit, but I usually try to stay pretty local so that I don't have to pay for travel for that reason. And then to pay for everything, I got a real job. Or I worked in a coffee shop for a very long time, and then I got another job. And that's how I do it.
Working at the coffee shop is a real job.
Mhm.
Oh, not at my coffee shop.
I feel like I touched on this earlier, but don't do nothing for money. Don't if this is your goal, if your dream is to become a millionaire, zines ain't it. Like, move on to something else, learn trading or something evil to create that type of capital and money. But zines is not it, because it kind of goes against the ethos of zines altogether. So it's counter. I mean, you should want to be able to make income, and you should be able to and to dream and the goal and that have a livable income is not something that you should deny yourself. But to like be doing this at the strip club, I don't know if zines, I mean, all those singles you make, perhaps the day after a zine show, you can do this at the strip club, but not every day. So I mean, I work from home. I do a lot of different work. I don't necessarily, like, I teach. That's my, I guess, quote unquote, real job of having a steady income that's come always. I can rely on that check because of doing zines. Like, I mean, look at what's happening now. No one, well, some of us foresaw this happening, but I don't think any of us truly understood that it was going to happen at the scale. And now trying to convince everyone to return to a zine festival now after this and be like, no, I swear to God, you're not going to get sick, may take some time. And so to put all of your reliance and hope into festivals, it's everything is shaky and fragile and fickle, which is why you got to do it for the love of it and not for the money, because the money will come and go, and you will have harvest seasons and you will have droughts. And that's what my mom always taught me. In those moments that you have harvest, save that money, because there will be a drought coming and you need to make sure you have income to support yourself during that drought. But yeah, I mean, I do it right, and I don't really go to shows outside of Chicago unless I'm a special guest and they're going to provide my airfare and my hotel there. And as a Black person, I love to ask for that and be like, all right, if you wanted me to be on all your diversity panels, you're going to pay for me to be there. So that's a good thing to stand up for yourself and know your worth. And in knowing your worth, know how much to charge for your zines, because my zines can range from $3 to $20 because I know it's worth $20, so you're going to pay me $20 for it, and that's it.
Yeah. I think it's also probably important to for every person to clarify for themselves what they're really setting out to do. You know, like, if they're trying to make a living from their art, which is okay, but that's the path they want to go. If a person just wants to make money, then, I mean, go down that path of just making money, and don't, you can pretty much bypass zines altogether, because that ain't it, and, but if you want to just get your, produce creative work and just send it out into the world wherever it may go, then zines might be the way to do that, so yeah, I think it really depends on what the person's overall, like, expectation is, or what their goal is. Because yeah, I mean, I do know a lot of people that have used zines as like a stepping stone, where they produced zines, it kind of got confidence up a little bit, and then they went into more, I think I find this a lot more with comics, but with some authors as well, zines as well, like, they'll shift gears and start maybe looking for an agent, a publisher, something like that. And since they kind of, I don't know, got their experience, got their feet wet with zines, they just kind of look, I won't say like step up from that, because I don't really see it as like, you know, something to elevate from, but they just move to a different, you know, a different area. And I think, yeah, again, I think that's all okay if you just, you know, are clear about your intentions and not just like, oh, I'm going to exploit, you know, the zine community just to, you know, build a name for myself and then take off, you know? That's my thoughts on that.
I feel like I'm trying to think of how I want to form this idea. I feel like now is a really good time to practice making like really shitty little zines, because you don't have to mass produce them. You can just like make a little zine and just be like, I don't have to give this away to anyone. I can just experiment with making a thing. And I realized also recently that I started thinking about how like this, I guess this could work for like text stuff too. But I was thinking about when people post multiple pictures at one time on Instagram and it becomes one of those like swipe through things. I was like, that's kind of like a zine. Like if you have a bunch of pictures that are drawings or like text, you could like theoretically later on print them out on a bunch of pages. But if you're just swiping through one page at a time, like one slide at a time, that's kind of like making a really like tiny digital zine that like maybe people will share in their Instagram stories or whatever. I don't know. I guess that's like what counts as a zine. It's like, I don't know. I don't want to get abstract.
Yeah.
I don't want to start thinking about it. Just do the thing.
Yeah.
All right, then. I think it's about that time coming up. So where can folks find your work? Where can they support you? Do y'all have any, you know, links out? Anything like that you'd like to share?
Most of my stuff you can, I mean, unless you found some way to contact me directly. Like if you contact me directly by probably just Googling Jonas and Zines, that'll probably bring me up. And you contact me directly, I would probably just send you whatever zine you wanted for free. But there's definitely a few distros that carry the work. One, Antiquated Future is a good one. Brown Recluse, that's another really good distro. Portland Button Works, that's another good one. That all of those you can find my work at, and then Quimby's, it's to be found at. And there's others that I'm totally spacing on, but yeah, those are places to find my zines.
I have www.higu.cool, and that has my links to everything.
Everything is Bianca Xunise. Everything's Bianca Xunise. Even I put some, for the sake of social distancing and not being able to go to the bookstore or not being able to get things printed myself, because I work with a local print shop that's a few blocks from me. But because they're closed, I put everything on Gumroad. So if you just go to Gumroad/Bianca Xunise, all of my zines are there for a digital download, and you can read them off your phone, print them out yourself. And then social media. It depends on what you want to see. If you want to see art, go to Instagram. If you want to see me go on tangents of things that nobody cares about, go to Twitter, and everything in between.
Yeah, you can find me at This Is Pink Boot on Instagram, or just go to thisispinkboot.com. But if you wanted to see like writing that I've had published, it's all on Queen Maud's Tea House. I'll just put that in the chat.
Yeah, I went ahead and put everyone's Instagram links in the chat, and some sites already posted.
Sick.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys. I'm happy. Y'all did great. Y'all were dropping gems throughout the night. Y'all really were, for a Monday, like, I'm so happy for the turnout. Like, I put on a shirt for this and pants. Like, I am, all right. Like, my shirt got buttons. I was fancy for y'all, okay? Like, ain't no fireworks go off in the background. You know, everything went off smoothly. So I'm so happy. Thank you so much for everyone coming out. Is there any final words anyone wants to say before we head out?
Thank you guys for coming. It was fun.
Yeah. Hey, y'all.
Hope everyone stays healthy out there.
Yeah, stay healthy, stay safe.
Wear a mask.
Wear a goddamn
Yes.
mask.
Seriously.
Don't go to a bar.
Se-
Don't do bad stuff. Just kidding. Do bad.
Now's a great time to make nostalgia work about that really fun time you had at the bar when it was safe to go. You can do that now.
Right.
Buy a VR of going to the bar.
All right. I think that's time to call it a night. Again, thank you so much. I had a great time, great conversation. Thanks everyone for coming out, and night.
Yeah.
All
Thanks
right, good
for
night.
hosting. Good night.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Blue stockings. Yay.
Yeah.
Thanks guys. Good night everyone.
Night.
All right.